I want to begin this story by speaking to you directly. Maybe you know this feeling too. You are sitting in a classroom, but your heart is heavy. The teacher is speaking, the other students are answering, but you stay quiet. You are afraid to open your mouth because every time you try, the words break and the class laughs. That was me. I was the quiet student in the back, hiding behind my books, hoping no one would notice me. At that time, English was my greatest fear. The words on the page looked strange, like a secret code I could never understand. My grades were always low, and every exam felt like proof that I was not smart enough. Sometimes when the teacher asked a question, I felt my chest tighten and my hands shake. I wanted to speak, but my voice would not come out, so I stayed silent. Day after day, silence became my only answer. Inside, I believed my future was already broken. I thought, if I cannot even learn English, how will I ever succeed in life? I watched my classmates smile with confidence. They raised their hands, they read out loud, they even joked in English. I wanted to be like them, but the distance felt impossible. It was like I was standing on one side of a river, watching everyone cross to the other side, while I stayed alone. In those days, I often dreamed about disappearing. I thought it would be easier if no one could see me, if no one could call my name. I carried the weight of failure on my shoulders, and it made me walk with my head down. I was alive, but I was not truly living. But life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. Sometimes in the darkest places, a small light begins to shine. For me, that light came in the form of a teacher who did not see me as a failure, but as someone with hidden strength. I did not know it then, but meeting this teacher would change everything. It would be the beginning of a story that transformed not only my English, but my entire life. Chapter 1: The Weight of Silence. Every morning I walked into the classroom carrying a heavy heart. The desks were filled with voices, laughter, and energy, but I stayed at the back, trying to make myself invisible. When the teacher asked questions, my classmates' hands shot up quickly. They spoke in English confidently, sometimes making mistakes, but always moving forward. I watched them and felt trapped in my own silence. My chest tightened, my hands shook, and I pretended not to hear my name when it was called. I avoided speaking whenever I could. Even a simple answer seemed impossible. I would stare at my notebook, pretending to write, or look out the window, hoping no one would notice me. Every time I failed to answer a question, I felt the weight of shame press down harder. It was like a wall around me, separating me from the others. The more I stayed silent, the stronger that wall became. I longed to belong, but fear kept me trapped. The silence followed me outside the classroom as well. At home, when my family asked about school, I gave short answers. Fine, I said, even when it was not fine. I didn't want them to see the truth, that I was failing, that I felt lost, that English seemed impossible. My younger cousin, for example, would proudly show her English homework, reading aloud without hesitation. I smiled and nodded, but inside I felt smaller. How could she, so young, be braver than me? Even in my dreams, English haunted me. I would stand in front of the class, trying to speak, but no words would come out. My classmates laughed, the teacher frowned, and I woke up with my heart racing. Some nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself if I should give up entirely. Maybe school wasn't for me. Maybe English wasn't meant for someone like me. The more I stayed silent, the more I withdrew from others. I stopped raising my eyes, stopped answering, and stopped believing in myself. Each day felt heavier, as though I carried a bag full of stones on my shoulders. It pressed me down, making every step more difficult. I felt invisible, forgotten, and hopeless. And yet, even in the darkest moments, a small voice whispered inside me, "You want more. You want to belong. You want to try again." That tiny spark was enough to keep me walking into the classroom each day, even when fear wanted me to stay home. It kept me in my chair, even when silence felt like the only safe place. I did not know it then, but life was preparing something different for me. Change was on its way, though I could not see it yet. I was on the edge of giving up completely, ready to disappear from the classroom forever. But just when the weight of silence felt unbearable, a new teacher entered the room. Chapter 2. The Teacher Arrives. The day the new teacher walked into our classroom, something felt different, though I could not explain why at first. She did not carry the strict, distant air that many of our teachers had. There was no sharp voice, no cold stare, no feeling that mistakes were punishable. Instead, she smiled warmly, her eyes calm and kind. Even before she spoke, I felt a sense of safety that I had never felt in school before. She began the class simply, not with a test or a list of rules, but with a gentle greeting. "Good morning, everyone," she said clearly. Her voice was soft, yet confident, and it seemed to invite us into a space where mistakes were allowed, where learning was more important than fear. Some students answered quickly, laughing as they tried new words. When they made mistakes, she did not correct them harshly. Instead, she repeated the words with patience, nodding, smiling, and encouraging them to try again. I watched her closely, feeling a mixture of curiosity and hesitation. I had spent years in classrooms where teachers punished silence, where every mispronounced word felt like a failure. Here was someone completely different. She treated mistakes not as weaknesses, but as stepping stones. She made learning feel alive, safe, and even exciting. I had never seen this before, and I could not help but feel a small spark of hope inside me. Then she looked at me. I froze, hoping she would not notice me, but her gaze was gentle. Her eyes met mine, not with judgment, but with understanding. She asked a simple question in English. "What is your name?" My throat tightened. My hands shook. I wanted to disappear into my chair, to vanish completely, but something about her patience made me try. I whispered my name, my voice small and uncertain. To my surprise, she smiled and repeated my words back with care, clearly pronouncing each syllable. "Very good," she said, clapping softly. My classmates did not laugh. They watched in silence. For the first time, I felt seen. I was not the silent, invisible student anymore. I was someone she believed could grow, someone worth noticing. That simple acknowledgement changed everything. The rest of the class passed in a blur. She spoke to each student with attention and care, encouraging them to participate, praising small efforts, and never rushing anyone. Her warmth made the classroom feel alive, a place where mistakes were part of the learning, not a source of shame. I began to sit up straighter, to listen more carefully, and even to imagine speaking English without fear. By the end of the day, a tiny seed had been planted inside me. It was a spark of courage, a first step toward believing that English could be something I could learn, not just something I feared. I had spent so long in silence that even a small word of praise felt enormous. And the teacher noticed my fear. She saw the way I avoided questions, the way my silence wrapped around me like chains. She did not ignore it. She made a quiet decision that day. She would not let me stay trapped in that fear. The next lesson, she would give me a small, simple task, one that seemed ordinary, but that would set me on a path to change my life forever. Chapter 3, The First Challenge. The next day, I walked into the classroom feeling heavier than usual. My heart pounded in my chest and my hands were clammy. The teacher smiled at me as I took my seat, and for a moment, I wished I could disappear. She began the lesson, but then, to my surprise, she looked directly at me. "Can you read this line?" she asked, pointing to a simple sentence in the textbook. I froze. My mind went blank. The letters on the page seemed to swim in front of my eyes. I wanted to say no, to pretend I didn't hear her, to hide as I always had. But then I remembered the kindness in her eyes, the patience in her voice. Somehow I nodded, shaking slightly, and I opened my mouth. The words came out weak, broken, and uneven. I mispronounced almost everything. The classroom was silent. I expected laughter, mocking, or sharp words. But the teacher did not flinch. She waited, her expression calm and encouraging. When I finished the line, she clapped softly and said, "Good. Try again." Her words were simple, but they carried a power I had never felt before. She was not angry. She was not impatient. She was not disappointed. She was asking me to try again because she believed I could do it. For the first time, someone in a classroom believed in me more than I believed in myself. I tried again, my voice trembling, my heart racing. I stumbled over a few words, paused, and then finished. The teacher smiled, clapped again, and said, "Better. Keep going." My classmates were quiet, watching in surprise. They were used to teachers getting frustrated, snapping at mistakes, or moving on without giving struggling students a chance. But she was different. She treated mistakes as part of learning, as steps forward rather than failures. With each repetition, I felt a strange sensation, a small spark of courage growing inside me. It was like I had been carrying a heavy stone for years, and suddenly a tiny crack appeared, letting light in. My voice grew a little steadier, my hands shook a little less, and I began to feel that maybe I could speak English, even just a little. By the time I finished, I was exhausted, but also exhilarated. The teacher nodded at me, her eyes warm and encouraging. "You did well. Keep practicing," she said. Those simple words gave me more confidence than any grade or reward ever had. For the first time, I understood that learning English was not about perfection. It was about trying again and again without fear. After class, I stayed behind. I did not know if I should, but the teacher smiled and said, "If you want, we can practice together after school." My heart leaped. The idea of staying after school with her seemed both frightening and exciting, but I wanted it. I wanted to keep feeling that spark, that tiny courage that had begun to grow. That one line in the textbook, that small challenge had planted a seed. It was the first step out of my silence, the first moment I realized that fear could be faced, slowly but surely. I was beginning to understand that courage was not something you needed to feel perfectly at the start. It was something you built line by line, word by word. And so I returned the next day, ready to face more lines, more words, more mistakes, because now I knew something important. I could try, and that trying was the beginning of change. Chapter 4. After School Lessons. After that first challenge, I began staying after school with the teacher. The classroom was empty and quiet, the usual chatter replaced by a calm stillness. The sunlight streamed through the windows, and for the first time, I noticed the gentle hum of the world outside. It felt different in this quiet space, almost like the classroom had become a safe place just for me. The teacher handed me a simple graded reader, a small book with short sentences and easy words. "We will take it slowly," she said with a smile. I nodded, my hands shaking slightly, but a tiny spark of hope had begun to grow inside me. She asked me to read the first sentence, word by word, carefully pronouncing each one. I stumbled at first, mispronouncing words, hesitating between letters, but she never rushed me. Her patience was steady and reassuring, like a soft hand guiding me through a dark room. I read the sentence again and again, repeating it aloud. Each time my voice grew a little stronger, a little steadier. When I mispronounced a word, she simply said, "Try again. You can do it." There was no anger, no impatience, no judgment, only encouragement. Slowly, my fear began to melt, replaced by trust. The teacher believed I could improve, and that belief started to reach inside me, changing the way I felt about English. The afternoons passed in a quiet rhythm. I read, she listened, she corrected gently, and I repeated. Sometimes she asked me to close the book and repeat the sentence from memory. At first I forgot, stumbled, and faltered, but she never gave up on me. With each small success, I felt a sense of accomplishment I had never known before. For the first time, English was not a monster to fear, but a friend to be discovered slowly. I began noticing patterns in the language, words that repeated in sentences, letters that combined in predictable ways. It was like learning a secret code, a key that unlocked a door I had thought forever closed. The teacher encouraged me to write a few words each day, to build confidence alongside reading. Each letter I wrote, each sentence I spoke, felt like a victory. I realized that learning was not about speed, but about patience, consistency, and courage. After a few weeks, I started to recognize words outside the classroom, on posters in the hall, on the cover of a magazine, even on the signs near my home. English was no longer a distant, intimidating language. It was becoming familiar. I whispered words to myself on the way home, repeating the sentences I had practiced. Each word I said aloud outside the classroom was a small triumph, a proof that the lessons were not confined to the walls of the school. It was a subtle but powerful transformation. The fear that had weighed me down for so long began to lift. Where I had once felt trapped and invisible, I now felt capable, curious, and ready to try again. English had stopped being a source of shame and had started to feel like a friend I could meet every day, one sentence at a time. And so, those quiet afternoons in the empty classroom became the foundation of something new. Step by step, sentence by sentence, the teacher was helping me build not only my English skills, but also my confidence and courage. I was beginning to see that knowledge and trust could replace fear, and that small, consistent effort could lead to real change. Chapter 5. Small Victories. As weeks passed, I began to notice the changes quietly taking place inside me. The words I had struggled to speak now started to appear in my daily life. The first time I ordered food using English at a small cafe near school, my hands shook. But I managed to say, One sandwich, please." The shopkeeper smiled and repeated my words back to me. I felt a surge of pride. It was a small act, yet it felt like climbing a mountain. I realized that English was no longer a distant subject in a classroom. It had begun to live in my everyday world. The next small victory came on the street. A tourist had stopped, looking at a map, clearly lost. I approached hesitantly, unsure if I could help. But then I remembered the teacher's patience, her calm voice, her encouragement to try. "You go straight, then turn left," I said, pointing in the direction. The tourist thanked me with a smile, and I walked away feeling lighter than I had in years. Each small interaction reminded me that my words had power, that I could connect with people, and that my English had a purpose beyond grades and tests. Even at school, I started noticing my confidence growing. A younger student struggled with spelling during a lesson, and I found myself stepping forward, quietly spelling the word for her. I could see the relief on her face and the gratitude in her eyes. It was a simple act, yet it made me feel proud in a way I had never felt before. The classroom, once a place of fear and silence, was slowly becoming a space where I could contribute, even in small ways. Each small victory reinforced the lessons I had learned during after-school sessions. The teacher's encouragement echoed in my mind. "Very good. Keep trying. You can do it." Her words became a rhythm in my daily life, a quiet soundtrack reminding me that progress comes in small steps. I started to notice the difference between then and now, the fear I had felt before versus the curiosity and courage I felt now. These small moments created a momentum that I had never imagined. I practiced English during breaks, reading signs, speaking words aloud, and even writing short sentences in my notebook. The language, once a monster that loomed over me, now felt like a companion, guiding me forward. Every time I spoke a word correctly, every time I helped someone or understood a sentence, I felt a sense of accomplishment that made the effort worthwhile. I began to dream bigger. What had started as the courage to read one line in a classroom became the courage to communicate, to connect, to be part of the world outside my own fears. I realized that small victories were the foundation for bigger achievements. Each step, each word, each sentence was building towards something greater than myself. But growth is never without its challenges. As my confidence grew, I began to hear whispers of a school competition, an English contest that would test everything I had learned. It would be the biggest test of all, the moment when all my small victories would be measured against fear and pressure. I felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Could I carry the courage I had built into a moment that mattered so much? For now, though, I held on to the small victories. Ordering a sandwich, helping a student, speaking to a stranger, these were proof that change was possible. These moments showed me that courage could grow from tiny steps, that English could be more than a subject, and that with patience, persistence, and trust, even the smallest victories could become mountains climbed. Chapter 6: The Big Test. The announcement of the school's English speech competition filled the classroom with excitement, but for me, it felt like a storm I could not survive. I tried to avoid the conversation, pretending I was busy with other things. I wanted to disappear. The thought of standing in front of everyone, speaking English aloud, made my chest tighten and my hands tremble. My heart whispered the same words it had whispered for years. You cannot do this. You will fail. The teacher noticed my hesitation. She came over quietly and placed a hand on my shoulder. You should try, she said gently. I shook my head. I, I can't, I whispered. She smiled not with disappointment, but with belief. You can. I will help you. One step at a time. We will write it together. That small encouragement was enough to pull me from the edge of giving up. We sat together in the quiet classroom after school. The teacher helped me choose a topic, something I could speak from the heart. My dream, she suggested. Simple words but full of meaning. She helped me structure the speech sentence by sentence. We practiced slowly, repeating each phrase, making sure I could say it clearly. I stumbled over words, mispronounced others, and sometimes forgot lines entirely. Yet she never rushed me. She clapped softly at every attempt, saying, "Good. Try again." With each repetition, my confidence grew just a little. The day of the competition arrived, and my nerves returned with full force. My knees shook as I walked to the stage. The bright lights felt blinding, the audience a sea of expectant faces. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. For a moment, I wanted to run back, to hide in the safety of silence like I always had. But then I remembered the teacher's words, "Believe in yourself. You have worked for this. You are ready." I took a deep breath, feeling that small courage she had planted inside me. I began speaking. My voice trembled, barely audible at first. Every word felt heavy, every sentence a struggle. My hands shook, my throat tightened, and I felt the old fear creeping in. But I remembered all those afternoons after school, all the small victories, all the sentences I had repeated over and over. I remembered her calm smile, her gentle patience, her belief in me, and I kept going. As I continued, my voice grew steadier. The words flowed more naturally. I could see the faces of my classmates, the teacher nodding in encouragement, and the fear that had haunted me for years began to melt away. By the last sentence, I was speaking with a confidence I had never imagined possible. The room was quiet, but it was a quiet filled with attention and respect, not judgment or ridicule. When I finished, there was applause. It was not the loudest I had ever heard, but it was enough. It was enough to prove to me that I could face fear step by step and overcome it. I had stood on a stage, spoken in English, and survived. I had challenged the voice inside me that said I would fail, and I had won. Not because I was perfect, but because I had tried. Whether I won the competition or not was no longer important. That moment changed how I saw myself forever. I had discovered a courage I did not know I possessed. I had learned that fear could be faced slowly, patiently, and with support. And I knew that from this day forward, I would never again underestimate the power of trying, no matter how small the first step seemed. Chapter 7, A New Identity. The results of the English speech competition were announced, and I did not win first prize. For a moment, a wave of disappointment washed over me. I had imagined standing on the podium, holding a trophy, feeling celebrated by everyone. But as I looked around, I realized something more important had happened. I had faced my fear, spoken in front of the whole school, and survived. That courage, that small triumph, felt far greater than any award. Teachers and classmates now looked at me differently. I noticed the subtle changes, a nod of recognition, a smile of respect, a quiet "well done" whispered as I passed in the hallway. I could feel their perception shift. I was no longer the silent, invisible student who hid at the back of the classroom. I had a presence now. I had a voice, and it mattered. The teacher's belief in me had not only helped me speak English, but it had helped me step into a new identity. At home, the atmosphere was different too. My family listened as I practiced sentences I had learned, and they smiled, proud. "You've changed," my mother said softly. My father nodded, a small grin on his face. They had always worried about my silence, my lack of confidence, my hesitation in English. But now they could see a spark, a determination that had never been there before. It felt like a bridge had opened between my small, quiet world and the larger one I had once thought unreachable. I began reflecting on the journey I had taken. I remembered the days of hiding at the back of the classroom, the nights of worry and self-doubt, the fear that had kept me silent for so long. I thought about the first line I had read with trembling hands, the afternoons practicing after school, and the small victories that had slowly built my confidence. Each memory felt like a stepping stone leading to this moment. I realized that the timid, silent student I had once been still existed, but now a stronger, braver version of myself had emerged. English had transformed from a monster into a tool, a key that could unlock new doors. I began to see it not just as a school subject, but as a bridge to opportunities I had never imagined. With each word I spoke, with each sentence I formed, I felt more connected to the world outside my classroom, outside my small town. The language that had once caused so much shame was now my ally, my passport to a bigger future. That new identity carried a quiet confidence. I no longer feared mistakes because I understood that they were part of learning. I no longer avoided speaking because I had experienced the power of trying. I could now face challenges with a steady heart, knowing that growth comes from persistence and patience. The teacher's encouragement had taught me more than English. It had taught me the courage to believe in myself. And in that belief, a new world began to take shape. I could dream bigger now. I could imagine myself traveling, communicating, connecting with people from different places. I could imagine opportunities that once seemed impossible. For the first time, I understood that English was not just a language. It was a bridge to a future full of possibilities, a tool to shape my own life, and a reminder of how far I had come since those silent days. Chapter 8: The Teacher's Lesson Beyond Words. As I continued learning English, I began to understand something profound. The teacher had given me far more than grammar rules, vocabulary lists, or pronunciation exercises. She had given me something invisible, something that could not be measured in grades or tests. She had given me hope. She had shown me that even in moments of fear, failure, and doubt, I could find courage, patience, and belief in myself. I remembered sitting in the quiet classroom, repeating words and sentences over and over, feeling frustrated when I stumbled. Yet she never scolded me, never rushed me, never treated mistakes as shameful. Instead, she said softly, "Good. Try again." Those words became a rhythm, a pattern of encouragement that echoed long after the classroom was empty. Slowly, I realized that learning English was not just about speaking a new language. It was about building confidence, trusting myself, and believing that I could face challenges. One afternoon, as I practiced reading aloud, she came to my desk and smiled. "English is not only a language," she said, looking directly at me. "It is a key. and you already have it in your hand. At first, I did not fully understand. I thought she meant vocabulary or pronunciation, but later I realized she had given me a far greater key, the key to believing in myself. That single sentence stayed with me, repeating in my mind like a gentle guide whenever I felt fear or doubt. It was in those moments, long after I had left the classroom, that I saw the depth of her lesson. Every word she had encouraged me to speak, every small victory, every patient correction, it was all teaching me more than English. It was teaching me life skills, courage to try when it seemed impossible, patience to persist when progress was slow, belief that effort mattered more than perfection. These lessons were not in any textbook. They were in the way she believed in me when I could not believe in myself. I began to notice the effect in my everyday life. I spoke English to strangers, to classmates, to family members, slowly gaining confidence. I was no longer afraid to ask questions, to make mistakes, or to try something new. Each success, however small, was a reminder of the teacher's quiet guidance. She had given me more than language. She had given me the courage to step forward, to dream, and to act. Looking back, I understood how rare such teachers are. Many teach words, but few teach the lessons that truly shape a person's life. She had given me a key to the world, not through exams or scores, but through patience, encouragement, and unwavering belief. Her lessons extended beyond the classroom, beyond the English language, reaching into the way I saw myself and my potential. Every time I opened a book, spoke a sentence, or connected with someone using English, I remembered her words. It is a key, and you already have it in your hand. That key was not just for reading, writing, or speaking. It was for courage, for hope, for trusting myself. And in that trust, I found the strength to imagine a future I had once thought impossible. Her teaching changed more than my English. It changed the way I approached life. It reminded me that the right guidance, combined with patience and belief, can transform fear into courage, silence into voice, and uncertainty into hope. The teacher had shown me that education is never just about knowledge. It is about giving someone the tools to discover who they can become. Chapter 9, Conclusion and Reflection. I want you to imagine yourself sitting in a classroom, just like I once did. You feel invisible. You hear the voices of your classmates, confident and fluent in English, while your own voice stays trapped inside, locked by fear. You try to answer, but the words won't come. Your chest tightens, your hands shake, and you wish you could disappear. I know that feeling. I have been there. I was that student, silent, ashamed, and afraid. I thought my story was already written, that my future was a series of failures waiting to happen. But let me tell you something important. Your story is never finished. Just as it was for me, change can come when you least expect it, when someone believes in you, or when you choose to believe in yourself. For me, that change came through one teacher. She walked into my classroom with warmth in her eyes, patience in her heart, and a simple but powerful belief that I could succeed. She gave me something no textbook could offer: hope. She showed me that mistakes are not failures, that fear is a step, not a wall, and that courage grows word by word, sentence by sentence. I remember the first line I read aloud in her class, my hands trembling, my voice weak. I thought I would fail instantly. I expected laughter, judgment, or disappointment. Instead, she clapped softly and said, "Good. Try again." Those simple words changed everything. They planted a seed inside me, a tiny spark of courage that slowly grew as I practiced, stumbled, and tried again. I realized that learning English, or any skill, is never about perfection. It is about persistence, patience, and faith in yourself. From that small spark, small victories began to build. I practiced after school, reading one sentence at a time, repeating words over and over until they became familiar. I started using English outside the classroom, speaking to strangers, ordering food, even helping other students. Each moment felt like climbing a mountain, yet each mountain taught me that growth comes in steps, not leaps. My confidence grew, my voice grew, and I began to see the world differently. English was no longer a monster to fear. It had become a friend, a tool, a key to possibilities I had never imagined. The speech competition was the moment when all my progress was tested. At first, I wanted to hide, to escape the fear that had haunted me for years. But I remembered my teacher's words: believe in yourself. You have worked for this. You are ready. I walked onto that stage, my knees shaking, my voice trembling. But as I spoke, sentence by sentence, I felt the courage she had nurtured inside me come alive. I realized that triumph is not measured by trophies or first place ribbons. It is measured by the courage to try, even when fear is loud. Even though I did not win first prize, I gained something far greater: a new identity. Teachers and classmates looked at me differently, recognizing the effort and determination I had developed. My family saw my growth, their pride reflecting the transformation I had experienced. I began to understand that English is not only a subject in school, it is a bridge to opportunity, connection, and self-expression. Every word I learned, every sentence I practiced, became a stepping stone toward a larger world. The most important lesson, though, was not grammar, vocabulary, or pronunciation. It was the lesson beyond words. The teacher taught me patience, resilience, and the belief that I could shape my own life. She reminded me that education is never just about passing exams. It is about opening doors, discovering potential, and transforming fear into possibility. The key she gave me was invisible, yet powerful: hope. With that key, I could unlock doors I never imagined existed, and I could step into a future I once thought impossible. To everyone watching this story, I want you to know that you are not alone. I was once silent, afraid, and ashamed, just like you might feel now. You may stumble over words, struggle with sentences, or feel that English is too difficult, but every small step matters. Every effort you make, every word you practice, every mistake you correct is building a foundation for growth. Do not give up. Do not believe that your story is already written. Change is possible, and it often begins with patience, practice, and faith in yourself. Remember, teachers around the world are more than educators. They are guides, mentors, and beacons of hope. They see potential where we see fear. They remind us that mistakes are not the end, but the beginning of learning. If you have a teacher like that, treasure them. If you do not, find someone who believes in you, or learn to believe in yourself. That belief is the most powerful tool you can carry, and it will guide you through challenges far beyond English. Your journey with English is not only about understanding grammar or expanding vocabulary. It is about discovering your courage, your patience, and your ability to persist. It is about realizing that each small victory, no matter how tiny, is a step toward your bigger dreams. It is about learning that fear is temporary, but confidence grows every time you try. Every sentence you speak, every paragraph you read, and every word you write is a building block for a brighter future. So keep going. Speak aloud, read daily, practice patiently, and embrace every mistake as a teacher. Your story is not finished. It is waiting for you to write the next chapter. And when you look back, you will see how far you have come, just as I did. One teacher changed my life forever, and now, through courage, persistence, and belief, English can change yours too.